curious what you each think. And Tom, I'm going to spin it over to you. And one of the comments you made was that a challenge you see at times with Microsoft in your environment is the cost factor. But from your role, what is it, Tom, that you'd really love to see?
You're quite right. I think for SMEs in particular, one of the things that Microsoft, in my opinion, just never seems to get right at the moment is the cost factor. We've touched on the likes of Microsoft Dynamics, and when you're looking at the license of Dynamics, you're talking in the region of £90 per user per month, which for an SME can be quite crippling, especially when you're having multiple users in place. So in my mind, the first thing I'd say is I want Microsoft to get more realistic with the pricing. If they want to wipe the floor with Google, and I think that they possibly can do it, they need to really get to grips and drill down their pricing model. And this is obviously a multi-billion-dollar business, so they do have the flexibility to do some of these things, especially if you want to adopt more users. I personally think that's the first place to start, because the rest of it is almost a pointless conversation unless you're getting the pricing model absolutely bang on. Certainly, the bigger the company you are, the less, to a degree, licensing costs are. Some licenses are fine. For example, Exchange Online Plan 1, for example, around £3 a user. That's absolutely fine. But when you're talking £90 a user, when you come to Dynamics, or even £60-70 a user ballparks, when you're looking at hosting servers within the Azure platform, again, it starts to become these are significant costs.
So your wand is a cost reduction wand.
Absolutely. I'm absolutely for moving to the cloud. I was once called a cloud evangelist. I would love to put as much things in the cloud as is humanly possible. I like the way Microsoft are going, but then if you take it back a step and you look at an SME, it's all good about Microsoft retiring the likes of Windows 7 with, I think, 13 months' time. I think Windows 7 becomes end of life. And when you're looking at the likes of Office 2013 and 2016 becoming end of life, within time, whilst a lot of businesses are now moving towards this subscription-based Office 365 platform, a lot of people are nervous about making that move, and actually it becomes quite expensive process to actually keep up to date, to actually go out and have to buy new machines, to actually buy the new operating systems and the subscription for offices. So absolutely, if I had a magic wand, it would be we need to you almost need to have almost a tick box service which becomes an enjoyable process. I think if you get as enjoyable process as these things can be, but if you get if you drill the costs right down, then we are going to get more companies adopting cloud services, because they will say, you know what, for the sake of £100 a month, which includes all these services, let's just take a punt. But either way it could cost several £100s.
There's a couple of things. One, I agree there about the financial element. I think there needs to be some sensibility around the pricing structure, certainly for smaller businesses, because the license cost, certainly for even a startup company, is like, whoa, that's a lot of money. I think there's also perhaps a little bit of caution around Azure, because I think now for companies with no IT support, it's very easy to spin up Azure. But I think what companies don't realize is that if you've got multiple subscriptions that keep running and running, you could be presented with a very big bill, as happened to one of our companies recently, and didn't realize it at the end. So there needs to be some governance around kind of cloud governance plans. They need to be given some support and education around that. That's absolutely key, because you don't want any small business or any business to be left with a massive hefty bill. I think for me, the ability to connect, to bring in more disconnected systems, to make it more integrated. I think integration is the key word, and we want to have this perhaps single system. I still don't think it's quite there yet. And lastly, you've also got the likes of Flow, which is great, but I think the ability to automate more complex workflows and policies, I think that's absolutely key, and I think that's something that Microsoft should be striving to aim towards. Those are so I think integration and cost are the two key things for me.
A big thing for me, and I guess it's already happened, so I really want it to continue to happen, is we've looked a lot on the Office side of things, and Microsoft obviously They are in there, and I don't think there's much real threat at the moment. The other side, obviously, is the cloud stuff, the Azure stuff, which kind of came in, in tandem with the Office 365 and the fact that Office 365 is on their cloud. The biggest change I've seen in the last couple of years, which I think has been probably the biggest change for Microsoft ever, is the openness. Originally, when Azure started off, it was very much a Microsoft cloud for putting Microsoft serverless applications in there. It became more of a general purpose public cloud, but it's still all about firing up Microsoft products, Microsoft operating systems. The last couple of years, the adoption of Linux on their cloud, the fact that Linux is a first-class citizen on their cloud, the fact that they've hosted open source projects on there, a lot of the Apache suite of big data products are all on there as well. This is something you would not have ever seen from Microsoft years ago. Years ago, they would have probably re-engineered the product to try and compete with some of the open source stuff and be out of, almost be out of business, so to say. Now they're actually embracing it because they know that and this is the big fear with the cloud, or with any one vendor product, is obviously vendor lock-in. Everybody knows we're pretty much locked in with them on the desktop and on the Office suite. And I don't think, as much as people are a bit uncomfortable with that, the pricing for Office and for the core tools, the fact that members of my family from the consumer side have purchased Office 365, and I've got a personal license as well, that kind of shows that it's transitioned from being a purely business product to being something where someone will pay £7 or £8 a month, and they know they've got all the Office suite. They haven't had to acquire it through some dodgy channel or through a friend of a friend or whatever. They've got the full suite there. So that adoption's been brilliant from an Office side. People, I think, are forgetting the vendor lock-in that we've got from the Office and the desktop side. I think we've all kind of accepted that the pricing is reasonable. For them to be successful in the cloud, they need to be open, and this is what they have done, and this is where they're getting the success. They've made more strides forward, in my view, than AWS have in the last few years. Yes, AWS is still far ahead, but Microsoft have always had the development community behind them because they were always a development company, whereas AWS are a retail company. And so therefore, they've got the people on board from the back end. I agree with what's being said around the dynamic side of things and the fact that more partnerships are required there. But I think what they've kind of realized is people probably don't want to be locked in again moving to the cloud. So you want some element of trying to avoid vendor lock-in. The fact that you can run your own applications on their cloud, it doesn't have to be Microsoft, works well. And actually for the cloud as well, the real world is everything is hybrid these days. As much as we may say we want to run our office just using our business using Microsoft technologies, the reality will be there will be a CRM, a legacy thing, or a payroll machine, or some other system out there which has always been there, and we can't get rid of it. Therefore, even with Dynamics, for Dynamics to work really well, you need the right integrations with the ERP, with all your accounting tools, with everything else. All your inventory tools, everything else that exists in the organization. So I think the reality is all organizations are hybrid from a technology point of view, and the fact that Azure are allowing people to bring their hybrid solutions to their cloud is actually probably why they're having the success they are having at the moment. So from my point of view, let it long continue, because I think that's going to help them win the cloud war.
They're going the right direction there and keep it going. So Alex, what innovation or changes would you like to see?
Well, I asked my head of marketing, and she immediately said she'd like some Microsoft Louboutin. She wants some new shoes. From my own perspective, however, I stood up in front of my whole company earlier this year and said, we're going to automate everything. And I think if I can plead with Microsoft to help us do that, is that there's more AI tools and more RPA tools and more ability to be able to take some of the data of the project and use Microsoft tools to help us automate things. So that is going to be my core focus for internal usage. And I think that I can see enormous opportunities for some of the automation tools linking in with CRM as an example. So a big project we've had this year is automate all of our returns So you can give, you can take out customer services largely from that conversation if we can. And I've got many automation projects running across the business, but none of them are with Microsoft technology, which is interesting. And of course, the other thing that's quite interesting for us is that we use Microsoft themselves. We are one of their biggest operational users. And what we find is that Microsoft themselves could do with a dose of operational keep up, because their partner center, while it's an enormous improvement on what we used to have to deal with.
Interesting. So I'm going to spin over with this AI because, Anne, it seems like you've talked a little bit about, with document development and all that. So it seems like a nice segue. And since you started this play idea off, I'm going to finish with you. Yeah.
I think, yes, I mean, I very much agree with Cheryl. My big shopping lists around all this is integration is absolutely critical. With integration comes the opportunities to build workflow, which is something that we are very strongly engaged with doing. But at the end of it, it's this massive data that we have and giving us new tools to be able to analyze that and provide new insights into our businesses and our customers' businesses, which is absolutely critical. Those are the big three, I think, for me, but above it all and around all that becomes the management of the risk. That is the critical bit. Security is what is exercising all of us at the moment. And I think my big wish for Microsoft is to give us the tools to make sure that we're working in a secure environment as well.
On behalf of Triad, thank each of you, and also on behalf of Tech Pros, I hope you all found this to be as interesting as I did. I think all of you had really great, thank you all for contributing. You all provided just as I thought you would.